Resident Evil Extinction. It's the third entry in the live-action Resident Evil franchise. The film tries to make you understand what happened at the end of Apocalypse, while also just making up their own fantasy setting. Alice is still our main character, so I can confirm that there has not been much decent development on the acting front. Yes, we have returning legacy characters like Carlos and LJ. I guess LJ's not really a legacy character, but here we will play with that. And for some reason we dragged in another one, Claire Redfield. Yay! Let's see how badly they ruined this character. The story goes like this. After the events of Raccoon City, the T-virus is spread across the continent and further into the world. Because the virus infects all living things, it has now turned the world into a barren wasteland, which either looks like Arrakis, the planet from Dune, or just random mountain shots across Arizona, California, and New Mexico. While these desert locations are somewhat accurate, the film is clearly not shot on location, which kind of bothers me. If your story takes place in a desert, go film it in the desert. It's not hard to get the permits to do that. It's a desert. Oh yeah, everything's basically dead or undead, because there's just hordes of zombies roaming around. The reason why we are in the desert is because the survivors of Raccoon City have created a caravan led by Claire Redfield. These survivors are struggling to get across the country in an effort to make it to Alaska, which there might be a safe haven there, but we never get there. The reason why is because of Alice. Sadly, this caravan is actually the only part of the movie I enjoyed. They have strange relationships with each other, but it kind of makes sense because they're kind of the last survivors on the planet. The one question I got for them, Raccoon City takes place in the Midwest, and in order to reach the desert, you would have to dip down into the southern states, right? Why wouldn't you just go across the plains? You would just avoid the desert. And if you're going to Alaska, why would you go all the way down to the south to just turn all the way back up north? Wouldn't you just want to start going across diagonally? People are idiots. Also, clearly the desert setting to save budget. So how does Alice mess up a good time out in the desert? Well, after the second film, Alice has decided that her new gimmick is to be a vagabond, scouring the world for any survivors. Which leads us to a radio station, who's been relaying that it's been safe and they have food. If you couldn't tell from the looks of the building outside, this is a trap. But Alice still goes in. In this building, she will not only fight humans, but also a few Cerberuses, without weapons. Just like that one time in the first movie when she decided to kick the dog midair, here the choreography is a bit more punchy, but it's still not much for today's standards of entertainment. After her cute little murder spree, she goes to bed having nightmares, which seems to have unlocked her ability to use telekinesis. Yes, she can now control things with her mind. So kids, when you're writing your stories and you feel like you might have jumped the shark, just make sure it's not as stupid as this reveal. Alice then runs into the survivors, helping Carlos save a little girl from a flock of infected crows by using her mind to shape the fire spewing out of a flamethrower. God, I hate Alice. And every time she uses her mind tricks, she has the dumbest expression on her face. Like, okay, Fantastic Four, the movies. When Sue uses her ability, she gets a nosebleed quite often. But with Alice, she just looks like she's trying to not fart. Umbrella is still around, and they're hiding underground again. But for some reason, they too have a base in the desert, where they're working on Project Alice, which is being led by Dr. Isaacs, who, this guy is just obsessed with Alice. He keeps making clones of her and tests them to see if they're strong enough to survive in his own series of saw traps. They all fail because none of them are as good as the original. Once Alice begins using her telekinesis, Umbrella satellites pick up on her energy. It's so stupid. And now have honed in on her whereabouts. Umbrella has the ability to turn her off like a robot, but she can also combat that with her mind powers. Isaac successfully kills off a majority of survivors on the Vegas Strip, which was another trap, but then he gets bitten. Now, Dr. Isaacs has been the bad guy, but what's more interesting is about how his peers and his boss, Albert Wesker, hates him. Oh yeah, Wesker's here. He just sits in the conference room and he mumbles his lines, and it's really hard to hear him threatening people, in which Wesker wants to fire Isaacs for the failure of Project Alice. So, Isaacs got bitten, and he says,
"The antivirus! Get me the antivirus!"
But later, we see him in his office just shooting up multiple doses of T-virus, because now he can become stronger than Alice. This is when one of his peers just shoots him because he's just a psychotic piece of shit. Sadly, the bullet did not do its job because of the T-virus, and Isaacs has transformed into a tyrant. Now, there is a tyrant in this movie, but don't get your hopes up. Seriously, this is the most lame tyrant in the entire franchise. Isaac's tyrant isn't even the size equivalent of pre-existing tyrants of its day, and he doesn't have claws, he instead has elongating fingers, and his go-to move is to shove them into people's faces to make them holy? Alice, when she encounters the tyrant, she's scared of him for some reason, and she ends up luring him into the old laser room. The grid turns on, and he is sliced to pieces, making another reference to the first film. Alice did not defeat the villain. She just backed herself into a death trap, and the only reason she's alive was because of a clone of her turned the grid off before the beams got to her. She is not a badass hero at the end of this movie, which is so strange to me that they did this to their own character. Because throughout this trilogy, she has been getting stronger and faster, more of a killing machine. She has force powers now, but at the end, she's just a scared little girl? Just fucking awful writing. Again, who spent money to see this garbage?
I am the future.
Resident Evil Extinction is a lackluster 2 out of 5 stars with me. Guys, I have very little to say here. I've made it very clear, but I'll reinstate it again. I never once liked these live-action Resident Evil movies. The writing is awful, the story beats are dreadful, and the acting. I think AI can outperform Milla Jovovich all day, anywhere. I personally feel sorry for the other actors who enter this shit show of a franchise. I can't fathom how these even made enough money to keep warranting more sequels. They are nothing like the games. It just tells its own story while ripping off cool elements of the games, in which in turn makes them look pathetic. But what positivity I can find within Extinction is that because this was released between Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 5, the games, they had no idea where the story was going, so they just kind of ran along at its own pace into a vast unknown desert, in which they'll throw away this setting for the next installment. That running pace was a very pleasant switch up from the last few films that I've reviewed because of the underwhelming 94-minute runtime, in which I would describe, the analogy running. You're running along and then all of a sudden you trip. You hit the floor, you get up, you make sure you're okay, and then the climax is already on the screen. Seriously, it was very suddenly, which is okay. You get a strange feeling that this movie was intended to be the last one with a lame cliffhanger.
I'll be damned. LJ, you sneaky son of a bitch.
My last thought. I've wondered this since I was a kid growing up watching these movies. Carlos appeared in the last one, and now he's appeared in this one. I'm very sad that he sacrifices himself to save Alice, but my question was, did Capcom intend this to be the end of the character? Because he's one of those one-time legacy characters, like Billy, Sheva, and Jake. If you know the answer, I'd love for you to share it in the comments. Anyways, that's my review of Resident Evil Extinction. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Hey look, we did it. We're now done with the first trilogy of films. I did it for you. Thanks for watching. Bye.